millimeter. He got 4 individuals.
You can make it here in America if you're willing to try.
I'm with you, the American people.
A new world order. A world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations.
Now we are in danger of being swamped by Muslims.
G'day and welcome to the Cunspiracy podcast. My name's Josh Wade. On today's episode, I speak to a current drug addict. His name's Sam. Sam messaged me earlier on in the week and he's got a fucking story to tell. He's done every single drug under the sun imaginable. He's been addicted to most of them. He's been to jail. He's been to rehab. It's one hell of a fucking roller coaster story. This is fucking Oprah now. I am Oprah. So if you want to sit down, this is an incredible story. If you want to join our weekly live stream, you can. All you have to do is donate to our Patreon, just a couple of bucks a month, whatever you can afford. It really helps us out and helps us pay for everything. So head over to the Patreon website now to help us out. I'm also going to be touring all around Australia in the next few months, so the ticket links will be down below. I'm going all across everywhere. There's some more dates to be announced. There should be some little tickery thing down the bottom here. So come and see me live, say g'day. I meet everyone after the show. If you can't afford anything, that's okay though. Let your mates know, share the fucking shit around. That's the only way that we're going to get found, so we really appreciate it if you show a mate or whatnot. Or if you want to say g'day, you can on Twitter @JoshWadeComedy, or say g'day, message me on Instagram @JoshWade with 2 E's at the end, because some fuckwit took my name. As I said, you're going to love this episode. It is by far one of the most interesting ones that I've done so far. Enjoy the show. G'day and welcome to the Cunspiracy podcast. My name's Josh Wade. On today's episode, I have Sam. Sam, you messaged me earlier on in the week saying that you used to smoke a lot of ice, crystal meth. You ran a business and everything went to shit from there. You went to jail, went to rehab, and now you're going through, I suppose, recovery. So I thought today would be a great episode. I messaged Connor after you messaged me and I said, should we get an ice addict on the show? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, great, this will be like fucking Oprah had a fucking child with Joe Rogan. Now you got Josh Bogan. So welcome to the show. Now I guess to start out and preface, the dog is jumping. Snitzel, she does this every fucking episode. I got a dog under the fucking table every episode. It gives me the shits. Episode fucking 20, it'll be at the bloody RSPCA. To preface, like, I suppose for everyone, and it's even as a comedian, I've made a lot of jokes about junkies before, and it's very easy to throw that aside. And when you're in a city, you see, you know, some homeless dude that's, you know, jacked up on meth, and it's sort of, you laugh at it, but you sort of forget. And it was in the moment that you messaged me that I was like, fuck, these people are human. Like, there's not a joke behind it. No one ever wanted to get addicted to meth. I know for myself, I will fucking have a few beers and then smoke a joint and I'm fucking rocked. So what on earth got you to that level? Where are you from? Let's begin with that. Like, what was your childhood like?
I had a pretty good childhood. Oldest of 5. Grew up with a happy mum and dad until sort of a teenager. They broke up. And my mum took all of us to remote Northern Territory to work as a nurse. I think that's when I started being a bit of a rebel. Yeah. Before that, I used to get picked on for doing my homework during lunch. But yeah, I think up there, I didn't really know who I was, I guess, or what I wanted to do. So yeah.
You were just going through, I suppose, like every teenager, I guess. Like when you say you're a rebel, I mean, like, what would you classify as that? Like, is that drinking at parties?
Yeah, I started drinking a little bit, you know, playing up in school, just wanting to break the rules, I think. And it never sort of progressed into anything hectic that young. But I left school. I started a job as a chef apprentice. And that I was 17 then. I'd already left school twice, sort of thing. And my mum decided, no, you're not going to do it in the pub in Darwin. You're going to go to Brisbane and do it at a good restaurant. So she organised it, sent me to Sirame Winery when I was 17. And from there, I just worked really hard, you know. For 18 months, I worked there. And then I left there and worked another 18 months at Aria Restaurant in Brisbane City. So I was always, like, you know, very driven and motivated to sort of be the best at what you know, whatever you do. But I think that's very big, you know, in the chefing world. You either, like I say to my apprentices, you know, you either got to want to be the best chef in the world, or just, you know, go work at Woolies or something, because it's just not worth it otherwise.
Yeah.
So then early on, you know, I recreationally did drugs, took pingers and this and that, you know, always smoked a fair bit of pot.
When did you start that? Like, are you
sort of like 17, 18.
so
you know?
about the same time?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Nothing hectic though, you know. Everyone would just go out on the weekend and you might pop a pinger, or, you know, would always drink lots. And after that, what did I do? I finished my chef apprenticeship at Aria, and I was just burnt out by then, you know. I was working 80 hours a week.
How long is an apprenticeship?
3 years, full time.
Oh, fuck me.
Yeah, and that's like, you know, the higher you go, the harder it is, and the less money you get. So yeah, we would get just rattled all the time. You know, if you weren't 2 hours early for your shift, you were late, and it was like you're a cunt.
Yeah.
But still, then, you know, I guess I used a lot of pot through there. It's always been like a way to escape, I think.
Pot.
Yeah, or drugs in general, you know. For me, it was like self-medication, you know. I never saw any doctors or anything. And it was never a real problem until, you know, I got a bit older. I went to uni for a year, and then I went to Melbourne to help a friend open a restaurant in Melbourne. And in Melbourne, I started doing heroin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna have to back up for a
pretty
sec.
like, yeah.
But that's okay. That's a
Yeah.
good roundup. So
Yeah.
now you said you're self-medicating. I suppose let's go back to, because these are little points that, you know, you jump over. But you said you left school twice already.
Yeah.
Now, you know, there's kids that are naughty and talk in class and shit like that. Like, do you remember, like, because leaving school twice and, you know, getting in trouble, like, what was your first sort of fucking with authority figures? Do you remember like a moment what was the naughtiest thing you did at school?
At school one time, the physics teacher was like annoying me and my friend, just by trying to teach us, really. And physics is hard. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So
she was doing her job.
Yeah, he was doing his job, yeah. And his name was Mr. and he was Indian, and he was a very nice guy. But one day I just thought it'd be really funny to throw a chair at him.
Fuck me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Not in a violent way. It was like, I don't want to do my work.
Just a
you know?
peaceful.
Yeah. Like, oh.
Hey, catch.
Yeah. And he kicked us out of the class, and then the principal came, and we ran around the whole school from the principal and like beat him to the office, and then sat there like, oh, you know, haha.
Okay. Now, like you do realize that like throwing a chair at someone, like people. No, I know you would realize it now, but to do that at that age, something behind the scenes, whether you realize it now or not, in your head has caused you to do that to someone.
Yeah.
Like, that's a really very bizarre thing to go, hey, it would be funny to throw a chair at an Indian man. So what was going on at home? Do you know, like, what are the things that caused that behavior? Is it because, did you have contact with your dad? Was it like a rejection from...
I think it was just being told that I, you know, had to do something, or, you know, being expected to, you know, fit into these, you know, social categories, or, you know, like groups even. And, you know, when I first got to Gove in Nullarbor, it's remote NT, and I came from doing 6 months at Morris Brothers College in Ashgrove. So I got rocked up there with like a pink shirt and a bloody iPod, you know, and I was the only kid in the town with any of this. And a few days after being there, I got beat up by, you know, a bunch of Tongan guys, just because, you know, there was a few things going on, but just because I was different, you know. So I think I was trying to fit in a lot. Everyone was drinking and partying, and I wasn't doing that beforehand. So
you had to overcompensate to be
I think
accepted.
So. Yeah.
Okay. So I suppose the chair throwing incident is more of you've got this a lot of things going on, not fitting in, living in the middle of buttfuck nowhere. You know, I don't know if you had much contact with your dad, but it seems like there's a clusterfuck of things that has caused this weird decision in your head to behave in certain ways like that. Okay, so during that time, do you remember the first time was weed the first drug that you ever tried?
No, I think I drank alcohol first.
Uh-huh.
I was always very scared of drugs, you know. It was always something my parents were very against, and they'd never used drugs. So it was something I would think about, but then I would sort of get a bit scared and not do it. The first time I smoked pot was because someone thought I'd smoked pot and said, "Oh, you know, you smoke pot, hey?" And I was like, "Yeah," and they gave me a bud, and I went home and rolled it up in some Bible paper and smoked it, half of it, and I didn't know what I was doing. I got really paranoid, and I cleaned the whole house and washed all my clothes because I thought my mum was going to know, you know. And then she got home and was like, "Why is everything so clean?" But I guess it was just sort of a natural progression. You know, you start drinking, and then there's people smoking joints at parties, and I don't think I was ever like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to, you know.
Yeah, no one ever does. It's interesting because I suppose, you know, there's, whenever I've gone to any town, I've done a lot of regional touring, and I see, my voice just cracked, I see a lot of people, it's really, it concerns the shit out of me, and this is why I think this is why I really wanted you to come on today. Ice is a massive problem, and it seems they all have a similar story to you, where they've come from a fairly normal upbringing. You know, the parents weren't extremely rich, but they weren't poor or anything. You got everything you needed. You got clothes, you got an iPod, you got shit like that. And it seems to be the same story of, I was scared to do drugs and I never thought I was going to end up. And then, you know, you guys are the ones that jump down the fucking deep end. When you said you were scared of doing drugs, I'm exactly the same now. I've never done a pinger, a pill, anything. I've smoked weed and I've drank alcohol. I've been tempted, but I've never done it because there's still this thing in my head, and I don't know why or where it came from, but I'm petrified. I'm petrified of the reaction that my body would have. So I'm interested to know, do you know when and why you overcame that fear and went, I'm going to do it regardless and of the risk? Like, do you remember your first pinger pill? I
do remember my first pinger, actually. It was in Gove, and I learned how to say the alphabet backwards just when I was high on this pinger, and I never forgot it, you know. And that was a sort of like really enlightening moment for me. You know, it was me and my friend, and we just sat in our bedroom and listened to weird trance music, and we were like, we're so happy, you know, like we were laughing for hours, and we were like, how can this, you know, be this amazing when it's so bad? So I guess that took away a lot of that fear for me.
Yep. I bet. Yeah. That's almost that's a double-edged sword then, because if they're saying that it's this terrible and then you try it and it's not bad at all, then maybe maybe we're teaching kids maybe we should be teaching them exactly what it is.
Yeah, I think definitely, you know, I think that's one of the biggest problems today with drugs and drugs in society, is that there's not enough knowledge and awareness about, you know, what they're doing or the effects of them, because no one says to kids, you know, oh yeah, like, you know, you shouldn't do ice because it, you know, they say you shouldn't do ice because it fucks you up, you know, and it's bad, and there's all these different things. They don't tell you when you first do ice, you're going to feel amazing, you know, and you're going to be able to do anything you want, and, you know, you're going to be able to do these things that you couldn't do before, and you know, stay up for days on end and, you know, feel great. But there's also the other side of that where, you know, you feel fucking horrible, and, you know, and then you feel even worse because it is such a bad thing, you know, and all of society is around you telling you this is bad, you shouldn't be doing this, and then you're like, well, I can't not do it anymore, you know, like, and I think, like, I had horrible anxiety, you know, like something I'd never had before, just from being scared that people would know I was high, or would, you know, be thinking this about me, or they were talking about me, you know. Whereas if you have more awareness of something, you know, there's no programs in school, or like, you know, you go to rehab now, like I've just come out of rehab, and they're not teaching you how to not do drugs, you know, they're teaching you how to do life, you know, and be mindful and live in the present. And it's all this life stuff that I think a lot of people miss.
Yeah. It's maybe too clinical. Like, all I can remember is the fucking Healthy Harold or whatever, the fucking giraffe in the van, which, you know, don't take advice from fucking puppet animals, because it doesn't work, obviously. So, All right. So you've done your first pill. You felt amazing after it. Did you ever notice with that it might have been once when you were with a friend, and then if you were around him again, you guys were going out? Like, did you have a friend that would always have it? When did you notice that you became the guy that then started to have the pills?
Early on.
So do you feel like it was like a one hit, like, fuck, this is great, I would definitely do this again?
Yeah.
I
think so.
And then it transformed into, wasn't it an addiction with?
No, it's not straight
pills?
away. You know, like back then, like my friend that I'd done it with, he was like straight away, you know, oh, this is for me. Like, you know, grabbed it with both hands, and a week later, his parents couldn't find him, and he was holed up in the town squash court, you know, after eating 50 eckies with his girlfriend. Right. And that scared me a lot, you know. Like, he had to go to rehab and was flown out to, you know, Biala in Brisbane from the NT when he was 15. And that sort of scared me off a little bit, you know.
Not enough.
No. And it was a few years, you know, like I just, after that, smoked pot with my friends a lot. That's all I wanted to do was, you know, get high and talk shit. And then I found work. And it went from being, you know, I guess like, I was always known as the drug guy.
So you became that.
Yeah. And I guess it's hard to, you know, get out of that once you're in that as part of your identity almost, you know.
I found that with weed myself. I gravitated towards it. Were you on any medication growing up?
Never.
Nothing, okay.
No.
Did you use weed when you were smoking weed when you were younger? Was that do you feel like that was part of like escapism and you know, not feeling your reality?
Yeah, you know, I think it's with all drugs is, you know, you just don't want to think really. And I would just I'd get home after 16 hours a day and punch heaps of bongs until I, you know, could sit on the couch and not think, and then I'd go to bed. So it was always a way to, you know, let go. You know.
I felt when I went through, I would say, you know, there'd be people that would adamantly disagree with me, but, you know, I'm me. I lived it. I felt like I was definitely addicted to pot. Maybe not necessarily the drug, but I was addicted to the high. And because I was too scared to touch anything else, it was like, well, I went harder at smoking weed because I was not doing anything else. And the thing was for me is that during this time I'd got lucky with I don't like the word luck. I think it's preparation meeting opportunity. But, you know, I'd started to gather this audience online. I was doing the stand-up shows, touring. I was making money, and I was 18, 19. I didn't have a house. I didn't have a car. I didn't have any responsibilities whatsoever other than my fucking phone bill. So I had all this money to spend on pot because I was like, to me, that was my hobby. And like you said, with identity, I had become, and I'd made my own personal identity, the pot guy. But because I loved it so much, I also translated my online persona and my character on stage to the bong guy. And it sent me fucking crazy. Like, I can't relate to what you've been through, but for me, like, being way down the fucking bong hole, like, I tried to kill myself. Like, I was in such a terrible place, like you just said before, with the paranoia. I was like, everyone's talking about me. You know, all my whole life's a lie. I don't even enjoy, you know, I'm living my dream, and I don't even fucking enjoy it. And it was this moment of like, I need to fucking stop. Like, it was like, I know exactly what the cause of this is, and it's the fucking bong smoking. I wasn't working 16 hours a day. I was doing jack shit. I was making but when Instagram videos were 15 seconds, right? I was making fucking Snapchat stories, okay? And and I was high the whole time, and it was a terrible thing. And I'm very lucky that I didn't fall down the trap because I wasn't getting high anymore. It was just to maintain this level of, I'm not in the real world, I'm high. So for you, when when did that translate? Like you said, you went to Melbourne and then you started doing heroin. Now, you know, that's easy to say, but no one just went, all right, well, heroin, let's give it a go. How and why did it progress to heroin? I mean, are you talking about like injecting heroin?
Yeah, you know, like I tried that once before when I first got to Brisbane.
How old were you?
I was 17.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, and it turned out like the executive chef, not the executive chef, but you know, one of the head chefs at where I was working was a heroin addict and was working, you know, nights packing shelves to support this heroin habit that nobody knew about for years. And it sort of came to light a little bit, you know, people started finding out, and I approached them and said, like, you're going to give me some heroin. And at first they were like, no, you know. And I said, if you don't, and I'll do it anyway.
Persistence is key, my friends.
And so they were like, yeah, you know, all right. And they took me to their house and we did heroin. And
was that a scary, like, cause
yeah, it was. I was shit scared.
I can't imagine walking into a room and fucking so you can see.
Yeah, it was
needles
like,
everywhere.
Yeah, you know, and that wasn't the first time I'd used a needle. You know, I'd had like 2 years earlier when I was 15. We'd all tried speed and it hadn't worked, and we went back to this guy and we're like, it didn't work, you know, and he said, oh, that's because you've got to do it properly. And he shot us all up with speed. Yep. Sorry if this is a bit intense.
No, this is exactly what I mean. But fuck me dead.
You know.
And in none of these moments, you're sitting there going, this is terrifying. I probably shouldn't be here.
Oh, well, yeah, you know, you do. You have those thoughts go through your mind. But then,
but there was something else.
You're 15, I guess. And
bro, at 15, I was fucking... found me dick.
like, I guess. I guess, you know, and it's all about... A lot of it is being told you're not allowed to do something, you know, like you can't do this, you can't do that. And it's like, well, I'm already doing this and that. And, you know, tell me I can't do it and I'll do it. It's dumb, I guess. But, you know, it's not a rational thought that's going on. And, you know, and it worked, obviously. We were like, oh, you're right. And I didn't do it again, you know, until the 2 years later. When I did the heroin, and that just made me sick, you know. I was sick. I didn't enjoy it that much.
Like physically sick?
Yeah, physically sick. I just vomited for 3 hours. Sure, I was like, oh, you know, this is nice. But yeah, I was just sick, and it's not something I, you know, sort of aspired to do. So I left it alone. And I finished my chef apprenticeship, you know, still just recreationally using pingers and maybe coke or something.
How often?
Once a week, you know, smoking a lot of pot, but at least once a week.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and in hospitality, that's very normal.
No, I know.
Yeah,
I've seen a few chefs before. It's why is it? Do you know why it's so common with chefs? Because I've met a few before, and like I have friends that own like bars and stuff like that, and they're like, he's fucking high, don't worry about him, because I've been like, that guy's a fucking weird cunt, and he's like, nah, he is just jacked up on every single type of
I guess
drug.
it's just because you have to go hard all the time, you know, you're at work and you just have to go hard, and if you're not high, you know, like it's all right because you will be soon. And you know, it gives you that confidence, it gives you that sense of fitting in, you know, like one of my chefs used to say class A all the way, and he would give me shit for not, you know, going out and doing coke because I was just smoking pot. So I guess, you know, there's a push in that industry as well.
Fuck, okay. All right. Okay, so now you've got to Brisbane, you've done all that. Now would you say that the going down to Melbourne was when you entered the next tier of... Yeah. So you've got down to Melbourne.
Yeah,
you've tried heroin again.
Yeah, I went down there not to do drugs, but to help my friend who'd opened a restaurant down there. That, you know, it was very famous very quickly, and he had 1,000 people on the waiting list, you know, overnight. And he rang me and sort of said, "Come and help." So I was on a plane the next day, and one of my friends said to me on the way down there, like, "No, don't do heroin." And I just remember thinking, well, that's dumb. Of course I'm going to do heroin, you know.
So you knew going down there, like, I'm doing heroin.
Yeah.
Why? Why was that something that you wanted to do?
I think...
You're excited to do it almost.
Yeah, you know, I'd read a lot about Melbourne and heroin, and you know, and it is down there. It's almost like a romanticized thing, you know. It's cultural, like, you know, you go to bloody Victoria Street and you see these people fucked up on heroin everywhere, and then you see bloody Matt Preston, you know, just buying his veggies and stuff. I didn't plan on it escalating into like everyday use, but it did quick, you know.
Okay, so you used heroin every day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and no one knew. Like I was going to work and, you know, getting high right beforehand or in between even, and they didn't know until I overdosed. And the guy I was living with, he had no idea. My other friend that I was like, you know, using with, he was there, and the guy's going, "What's wrong with him?" And my friend was like, "Oh, I don't know, you know, I don't know," and didn't tell him. And the ambulance came and, you know, resuscitated me, and that's when I was like, "Fuck, this is," you know.
So you were gone. You were just on the bed dying.
Yeah, man. Yeah, like they said, I was blue. They had to do CPR, and the next day I rang my mum and told her, and said, "I got to get out of here. You know, I've been doing this," and yeah, I told her what had happened, and I just said, "I got to get out of here."
Could you imagine having a kid now? You having a kid, and that kid calling you up, going, "Hey, I just almost died,
it's fucked.
and I've been doing heroin for this whole time." That's really heavy for your mum to hear. And she's obviously, does she know at this point that you've got a bit of a problem
Everything,
with drugs?
she knows everything.
So she knows that you're very susceptible to falling down some fucking terrible holes.
Yeah.
Right. So, all right. Just out of interest, and it's sort of unrelated, but do you remember anything in that experience of dying, I guess, or overdosing?
No.
Nothing.
No.
Do you remember the moment that you like? What was your last memory, and then the next?
I remember lying down on the couch and thinking like, "Oh, I'm tired," and then I woke up with a paramedic in my face. That's all I remember. And then, you know, sort of a minute or two awareness kicks in, and you're like, "Fuck."
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like a peaceful way to go. It sounds fucked up, but if I was going to go, then going, I feel a little bit tired, and then wake up and go, "Oh, it didn't work." Heavy. Okay. So you've done that. You've rang mum. Have you left Melbourne, or you
I
still
left straight away.
Okay.
I told my boss, you know, "I've got to go or I'm going to die," and he was like, "What do you mean you're going to die?" You know, and I told him as well.
Did you look like a heroin addict? Could you tell at all? Did you know her before this?
Yeah, I've known Belle since I was in high school. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you tell Belle?
No, I lived with him down in Melbourne for a couple of months, and I had no idea he was using it all down there.
Okay. She just said that she had no idea that he was using it. Okay, that's interesting. So, right, so you've come back up to Brisbane, yes?
I went back to Gove,
NT,
Nullarbor,
okay.
and stayed with my mum there for a little while. And then I came back to Brisbane.
Were you good in this time when you were back with your mum?
Yeah, you know, I was pretty good on and off. I was, you know, I did use a few times up there.
Use what?
I used heroin once.
So that experience was still not enough.
No.
And then going in the middle of butt-fuck nowhere, you
Yeah.
still got your hands on heroin.
Yeah.
So it's fucking clearly extremely addictive.
Yeah, very, you know. And I still remember back then, you know, like, because I didn't want to be doing that, you know, but there was always this voice in the back of my head, and people would ask me, like, "Are you going to do it again?" And there would always be this voice going, "Oh, I can't say I'm never going to do it again." You know, like, of course I can do it one more time or something. Yeah, it's fucked up. So yeah, I worked there for a few months, and, you know, I didn't become dependent on anything, but I figured out how to buy my drugs online there, and, you know, so I was, you know, smoking pot, and occasionally I'd do a bit of heroin or, you know, ice. I tried, I think, you know, up there a few times. And then I came to Brisbane for a wedding.
Wait, ice. Okay,
Ice,
is this your
yeah,
first
yeah.
introduction to
No.
ice?
No, it's not. I think I first smoked ice at uni. I had a break in between, like, Brisbane and Melbourne from chefing, and I went to uni for 2 years. And
What were you studying?
I was studying law and environmental science, and a guy that I was working as a chef just on the weekends, and one of the kitchen hands there said, you know, like, "I'll come back to my place and I'll try this." And he was using ice all the time, and no one knew, you know, everyone loved him. It was amazing. And so I went back there, and I remember smoking it, and I was so sick. I must have just done a whole lot, and I was vomiting, and then I was in the bed sweating and cold, and then I was hot, and it was horrible. But as soon as that passed, you know, like I wanted to do it again. And I used a little bit then, you know, like with uni I would use it, and I would do my assignments, and it wasn't a huge problem then.
So was it like a stimulant? Like, so you're using it almost like people use fucking Dexies and stuff like that
you know.
to work on? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you worked better on it? Or is that like, would you say that you actually worked better on it? Or did you think you were
better on it? Yeah, but you know, in saying that, there's not many things that you can take that will just, you know, like you can take it and then sit there and do something for 8 hours that is extremely boring or repetitive and nail it, you know. So I could sit there and focus and do a uni assignment from start to finish, you know, while my friends are doing raps and playing Bejeweled and shit.
Yeah.
So that's when I first sort of used it a few times, and then went to Melbourne. Didn't use it all in Melbourne because I was using heroin.
Go one better.
Yeah.
Why not?
And then Gove, and then back to Brisbane. And I told my boss from Gove that I was going to stay in Brisbane to go to rehab. And my mum wanted me to go to rehab then, but I just didn't think I needed it, you know. I was like, I don't need that. That's for bloody junkies, and it's so long. It's, you know, how many months. And so I missed my flight. I was going to go back to Gove. I missed my flight, and the next day I had a job as a chef, and I just started working again.
In Brisbane?
In Brisbane, yeah. And I maintained that for a few months.
And during none of this time, you've obviously said, I don't need to go to rehab, I'm a junkie. By all accounts, you're a junkie from the outside world.
Yeah.
And when you say, I suppose junkie has a negative connotation to it. How old were you at this time?
24.
You're 24 and addicted to basically any drug under the sun.
Polydrug addict, I guess they call it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I was always high.
Okay.
I was always high.
Yeah, looking for the next
Yeah.
high. Okay. In this time, did you ever take any pharmaceuticals?
I took a little bit of Valium and Xanax at uni, just because there was some kids there that were using it a lot.
Recreationally?
Yeah. No, not recreation. Like once or twice, you know, I took Xanax and drank, and that was just the dumbest thing I've ever done. I don't remember what it was.
I mean, you weren't taking Xanax for anxiety, okay?
No, I wasn't taking it for anxiety, yeah. Maybe just like, you know, to, you know.
Calm you, bring it down, okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so you're in Brisbane. Now, when does the ice thing become a problem?
So I worked there at this place for a few months, and did uni as well. And then my friend came back from working on the mines, and he said, let's open a restaurant, you know? And I was straight away like, yeah, let's do it. So I left my job, and I told him, like, this is what we should do. You know, we should make these bao buns. They're going to be really popular, rah, rah. And he was keen. So we started building this restaurant. And at that point, I really didn't want to use, you know. It wasn't a common thing, but I was smoking pot, and I was, you know, getting high every now and then. But
when you say high, though, can you...
I was smoking ice. Yeah,
okay.
You know, I was smoking a bit of ice. And I didn't want that to jeopardize, you know, the restaurant. And I remember saying that to people, you know, they're like, why are you stopping? You know, I started going to NA meetings, and I did like almost 30 days clean or something. And I said, you know, if we do fuck this up, I don't want it to be because I was high on drugs.
Okay. So you've got purpose in your life. You feel like that's the first time you've really got a...
Yeah.
Fuck, I've signed up for something now, and I've you know, do you feel like this is the most that you tried during that time to go, I need to stop? Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And I did for a little bit, but then we built it for 6 months, and I had friends come and help and all of this. And they were using, you know, while I was not using, and I was able to not do it for a while. Then we opened the restaurant, and it was just full on from the start, you know, and I was working 100 hours every week, all the time. And I started, smoking a bit of ice then, just to keep it going, like to work that many hours. And everyone else was doing it, it was like whatever. And the more I worked without a break, the more I used. And it turned into every day. And I was running this restaurant. My friend who ran the restaurant left, that I opened it with, and he was because it was just so full on.
Was he? Did he smoke?
No, he drank alcohol.
Yeah.
But yeah, everyone thought he was on the ice because you just saw this sort of steady decline.
Yeah. And
then he snapped and said, "It's over. It's done. I can't do it. You can't do it. Obviously, it's fucked." And I poured the last 6 months of my life into it, and I felt like it was on my baby. And that was in December, the start of December. And I said, "You can't do that. Like, what are you going to do?" And he said, "Sell it. You can buy it off me, if you want. Otherwise, I'm going to fuck it off."
So he's been the financial person behind it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I suppose at that time it's not really anything no skin off your back financially, if it.
No, not really.
Okay,
I worked for
good.
6 months for free. I all the sort of like intellectual property, I guess you'd call it. Like, I came up with the concept and everything. But yeah, I didn't.
Did you make
I
money?
put in like $10,000, I think.
Yeah, no, but like you made money. You said you worked for free.
Yeah, I worked for free in a sense that I would work for free and receive a share of the business.
Okay, yeah.
But after a few months, like I wasn't getting paid. No one else was getting paid, and everyone was sort of going, "What the hell?" And we were turning over a lot of money. Like it was very successful. So there was fights between me and him. From early on, until it got to a point where he said, "No, it's fucked. It's not working."
Yeah.
So I had the option to either buy it off him or just walk away.
Yeah.
And I decided he said, "If you want to buy it, then tell me when you've got $10,000 and I'll get a contract drawn up." And I just messaged him straight back and said, "Yeah, I've got it. Get the contract drawn up." I didn't have it.
You were going to find a way.
Yeah, so I found a way. I asked friends and family, and I opened the restaurant one day, and told everyone it was all cash, and turned a couple $100 into a couple $1,000 that day. And then I met him and bought the restaurant. And so sort of one day I owned none of it, and the next day I owned all of it. And that was at the start of December. And this place had a liquor license. It was in the middle of the valley, right in the middle of the valley. Opened 6 days, just doing lots and lots of business.
How long ago was this?
This was 2 years almost.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, this is December of not last year, the year before.
15, yep.
Yeah. And obviously there was no staff because everyone was fed up. And so I reopened, and I just went hard. The landlords told me I had to pay them $25,000 by Christmas to keep the place. And I opened every day. I got friends to come and help, and I kept it alive. And I also started using a lot more ice in that time, and I never thought it was a problem. I guess I was blind to all of that.
You got a lot going on.
Yeah.
Okay. So when is the moment where shit really starts to hit the fan? Because you're digging, you're smoking all this stuff. You've got a lot on your plate. For anyone, a sane person would go crazy with that. But you're chewing away your own mental health by giving yourself possibly one of the worst things for that. So when did it shit?
It all was like very abruptly went to shit sort of thing. At the start of July last year, there was problems.
So there's been, from December to,
6 months,
fuck, you've kept that up.
Yeah.
All right.
And it was full on, like it was hard because it was quite a time of year, and I was trying to catch up with this money, and and I was using every day, and I was trying to hide that from everybody.
Is that costing money as well? Like, is that costing you?
Lots of money, you know, ridiculous amounts
How
of
much?
money. Oh, a couple $1,000s a week at least, you know. Yeah, at least. Yeah. So, but I guess that, you know, that's what made me able to maintain it, was I didn't have to go and steal shit or, you know, commit crimes to get money to fund a habit, you know. I just had the money. And there was ups and downs, you know, like there was a lot of times where it was like, you know, I wouldn't open for, you know, this day or that day, or, you know, I'd always forget shit, and, you know, but I maintained it until the start of July. And then there was one day when my girlfriend at the time, she'd been in Europe and she got back from Europe, and the same day my family went away to Europe, and she went through my phone and found out I'd been talking to some other chicks and stuff, and she, you know, obviously lost her shit at me, and I had a bottle of pills that was like Valium and some endones or something. I don't even know why I had
some
them.
of the good stuff.
Yeah, you know, and she's a nurse, and I just ate this whole bottle of pills and said, well, you can't leave me now, you know.
Oh,
yeah,
that's a kind of an
pretty
act.
horrible. Yeah. So she didn't, thankfully. She looked after me for that night until the next day, which was her birthday. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. And we went to go she was getting a tattoo for her birthday, and I went along to that, and I was just out of my mind, you know, still. And I told her I'm going to do something, like I'll be back, don't go anywhere. And I left, and I think I went and got on, you know, and got high. And then I came back and she wasn't there, and I just dipped it. I don't remember what happened after that for like 5 hours, but I must have been driving around like looking for her car or something, you know, like because she wouldn't answer her phone. I was trying to find her.
You're talking about you've gone skits?
Yeah, I've gone completely skits, man. Like, and I blacked out for like, you know, how many hours as well.
While you're going through this?
Yeah, and I woke up after I crashed my car. And the car was, you know, it's a new car. It's going, oh, you've been in an accident, and the authorities have been called. The coppers found me. They weren't too impressed because I'd ran away from the car.
Do you remember running away from the car?
Yeah, at that point I'd woken up and gone, shit, I'm going to be in trouble.
When you crashed the car?
Yeah.
So that was the catalyst.
I've got to get out of here. And they found me and they said, what's going on? And I said, I think I've crashed my car, you know, I've got a sore head. And they took me down to the police station and said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to my missus' house. And they said, no, we've already had a call from there because I was harassing them, and you're not going there. So I said, all right, I'm going.
So she's called the cops on you?
Yeah, because I've been out of my mind just calling and saying I'm coming or something.
Are you making like threats at this point? Like if you're blacked out, are you like...
No, it wasn't.
Are you in a rage, like a violent rage?
Not violent, but, you know, like I was angry because like she wouldn't answer me and I didn't know where she was, and I, you know, had all this convoluted shit going on in my head, like she must be doing this and that and all of this shit. So they said, you know, like, where are you going? And I said, there. And they said, you can't go there. I said, fine, I'm going to my mum's. And they let me go. And I got straight into a cab and went to my girlfriend's house. And bloody climbed the balcony, got inside, all of this. And her sister was there. I still didn't know she was there. My girlfriend's in the room. And her sister sort of said, oh, it's all right, sit down, you know. And I didn't know, but my girlfriend has called the police from the room. Because she's scared, you know, obviously.
Yeah, so, you've just scaled the balcony.
Yeah,
like
exactly,
fucking...
you know, a little bit crazy. And the same cops rocked up, and they weren't impressed. So they...
Do they understand at this point that you're fucked?
Yeah. So they...
were they, like, if you look back on it now, were they compassionate to the situation?
No, they grabbed me and they smacked my head into the car door and, you know, actually hurt my head. And then took
Part of me wants to say you probably you needed a real slap on the fucking ass.
Exactly. And they took me to the hospital and said I was suicidal, and I got put in a psych ward for a week for drugs and suicide. And that's when it was sort of like I couldn't contact anybody. I had staff at the restaurant, they didn't know where I was. I was telling these nurses, I was saying, you know, like, you got to let me go because I have to go open my restaurant in the valley. And they were saying, oh, he's deluded, you know, he thinks he's got a restaurant in the valley. And that just made me furious, man, you know, like, it's fucked up. So I've tried to fight it for a few days, but nothing. And I just ended up not saying anything except Valium for 3 or 4 days, and then they let me go.
So they just fed you Valium?
Yeah, I tried to argue and, you know, plead my case and tell them all this fucking information and this and that, and they just wouldn't listen at all. And then,
they're probably under strict order to not, like, I don't think by that point, once you're in like, I suppose, what would it be, like a psychiatric ward? Yeah. It's like, this is what the cops say. Yeah. Or the doctor approves it, so you're staying here.
And I just gave up, and I'd wake up in the morning, I'd say Valium, and they'd say, you're right, and I'd say Valium, and they'd just feed me Valium, and then they let me go after.
Oh, that's fucking days. Just fantastic as well, isn't it?
Yeah. And that the day after I got out, a doctor from, you know, some acute care team rang me and said, oh, I've just looked at your file, and seems like you shouldn't have really been in there for that long. Is there anything I can do? And I just hung up the phone, you know, I didn't want to hear it after that.
How long did you spend in there?
8 days.
8 days.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's a long time.
Yeah.
I had I don't have a friend. I know someone who was going through I don't know what it would be, but it would probably be like a mental breakdown, and similar thing where they just sort of skitzed out and ended up spending like 3 or 4 weeks. I don't know. It was a very long time, and it was in America, in like a fucking like a padded cell, like, or pretty much.
Yeah.
And from all accounts, it didn't. I'm gonna beep that out. That person ended up going back there because it was such a traumatic experience that it almost sent them crazier. Yeah. And I remember seeing some stuff after. I'm like, whoa, this is sent someone even more loopy. To be like be put in a white room for this whole time, you would lose all.
So true. Yeah.
Lose any concept of who am I? What do I like to eat?
So yeah, you know, like it wasn't nice. It wasn't pleasant, and it made me a lot angrier at, you know, society and the law. You know, I was already angry enough by then. You know, like, I'd been picked up once by the police and done for possession, and, you know, and I was in the valley, so...
Were you angry at them, or were you angry at the fact that you got caught?
Well, I was angry at them, and I was angry at the fact that I got caught, of course, you know.
But now your hatred of authorities is, you know, or that idea of fuck them, they're making things worse for me.
Yeah.
I guess really what you were doing at that time was, you know, putting all your own problems on external forces.
Yeah, and it's very easy to do that, you know.
Yeah, of course, especially when you're fucking high. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess that just sort of made it worse. After that, I got out and I tried to reopen the restaurant, and I did for a few weeks, and, you know, I'd lost all this money because it hadn't been open, and no one knew what was going on, and it just went downhill from there, you know. It lasted another couple of months, and then I was just over it, you know. I was having visions of me just hanging from the rafters in there, because I was in there by myself all the time, and I just felt like I had no one to help me, and all of this. But really, like, I just exhausted all avenues of help by then. Yeah.
So I guess the girlfriend thing, that's the first domino to fall, and now everything starts tumbling over. Yeah. So I guess you know, without getting too far into it, you probably went back into using pretty heavy, really heavy, heavier.
Yeah, probably. Heavier,
okay. Yep. Right. So you basically, unintentionally trying to give yourself a death sentence, because by this point, what's the fucking point of living?
Yeah.
Okay. When was the moment? So you said, did you go to jail?
I didn't go to jail then. No. I you know, burn it all into the ground. The last week, I remember just every night, if I made any money, I would take all the money and go to the casino and just burn it all at the casino. Yeah, people thought I was crazy because I was laughing as I was losing money, you know. and that was it. Like, I couldn't do anything else. It was done. And I had another fight with my girlfriend over, you know.
So she's still in the picture?
She still was there after that, you know. And I was like, all right, this is fucked, you know. When my drug dealer was like, you know, he was like, you're fucked, mate. You know, you got to go sort yourself out. So I guess when it gets to that point, you sort of, you know, fuck. So I went to Cairns to see my dad, and I spent 3 months up there getting clean. And I did.
Was that the longest time that you?
Yeah, in like 10 years. Yeah. And it was good, you know. And I didn't plan on going back to using. I stayed 3 months up there, and then I came back down to see my mum in Mullumbimby, and I got a really good job in Melbourne lined up when I was there. Yeah, I know.
I know where this is
no.
Right.
But then I came to Brisbane on like the day before New Year's, and my best friend, he died of an overdose. And that sort of fucked me up, you know. The next day I woke up on New Year's Day, 2 paramedics again, because I overdosed on.
Now,
yeah,
was that because I think for most people out there, they would say that, you know, their friend dying from an overdose would make them go, well, I'm never going to do that again.
Yeah.
But obviously you've already gone through it yourself. Now your friend's gone through it. So did you use it out of, you know, because you were upset about what had happened? Or?
Yeah, and I think it was just, I guess, a way to reconnect with him, you know, like his friends at the time.
We're all in it.
Yeah.
So this whole thing, this whole story that you're telling me right now sounds more like it's coming from the environment that you're putting yourself in.
Yeah.
The people that you're hanging around are the core thing that makes you go back to it. Because if you can go to Cairns and not touch it for that long, that's because you're not in the environment.
Yeah.
So what is it that draws you back to these fucking people?
I don't know.
They can't be awesome people.
No, they're not. No, of course not. Well, then it was, you know, I was looking for him, I think, you know.
Okay.
Like, and I just, I was, because I went away and
fucking
I said,
do
I'm
a
getting,
Ouija board before you go doing heroin again. You've already got enough demons. Another one wouldn't fucking hurt you.
And at that point, you know, I'd gotten my shit together. I'd talked to my girlfriend. She wasn't my girlfriend then. And, you know, we were sort of like, it was looking good, and I was going to Melbourne. And that happened, you know, I used and I overdosed, and it was like, fuck. And I told her, and she sort of said, right, fuck off. I don't want anything to do with you, you know? And that's when I just didn't care anymore, you know? I just went back to using. And I think one of my friends in rehab, he said a few times, like, when you stop, you know, like, the more you use, the wider your boundaries get, you know, and the more hectic or bad or, you know, whatever stuff you'll do to get on and all of this. And when you stop, and if you're to go back to that, it doesn't, like, reset, you know, back to when you're a teenager. You're straight back to there, you know?
Yeah. Your starting point is so much deeper.
Yeah.
So and again, it sounds like with the girlfriend thing, you got clean, and it sounds like, was that in the hope of trying to rekindle a relationship with her?
Yeah.
So you're you've got a thing where you place your own self-worth, and this is, I guess, everyone. You're placing where you feel like your happiness comes from is from somewhere else, right? It's his girlfriend, and she's the reason, or you need a reason, whether it be having a fucking restaurant or something else, as a purpose. It's not me. I need to be in fucking sync with myself. It's something else. So, okay, so you've gone back to Melbourne again.
I didn't go.
Oh, you didn't go?
Yeah, I had a job lined up at one of the best restaurants in Australia. You know, it was a sick job. And I messaged him and said, I'm not coming. You know, my friend's died and blah, blah, blah. And I didn't work. I didn't go back to work. I just started doing a lot more ice than I did before. And fully, like, just immersed myself in that scene, you know. And it was so much different from before because I didn't have any money. I didn't have a job. I couldn't support myself with any other way other than crime, really.
You're at rock bottom.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And when was this?
That was at the start of this year.
Start of this year.
January 1st.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when you say crime, like, do you remember like things that you did? Or I mean, you don't need to incriminate yourself now. But
Just stealing and
things and then selling it for money.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Just anything to get money. Okay.
Anything you can, you'll do anything you can to get it.
Yeah, yeah. And are you normally high while you're doing it as well? So
Always high.
okay, so your inhibitions they don't exist.
Yeah, out the window.
Okay. So what was it that then? Did you go to jail after this?
I went to jail. Yeah.
Okay.
In at the end of May.
At the end of May this year.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Recently.
Yeah,
End of May.
pretty
End of
recent.
April. End of May.
Okay.
Yeah. It was my second day in jail was my birthday. So.
How old were you?
27.
It's a good way to spend it.
Yeah.
They have a birthday cake or anything?
No, I kept that shit real quiet.
Just bringing a bit of lightheartedness to the show. So you're in jail. Why did you go to jail?
I went to jail because I was a dickhead, mainly. So I got a job after 5 months of not working, and I was getting my shit together a bit. Like I stopped using as much. I managed to get to a job, and then I was on my third shift or something, and it's in the valley, and I was having a cigarette, and the coppers come up and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm having a cigarette. I got to go back to work." And then they just ran my name, and it come up that I hadn't been to court for something. On like a few weeks earlier, and the court date they'd said had been on a public holiday, and I said, "Yeah, it's on a public holiday. What do you expect?" And they said, "All right, we're going to take you down to the fucking watch house and process you and everything." And I was like, "I'm at work. I can do this later. I can come down after work. Anything you want. Like I've just got a job." And they said, "No, it won't take long. So they took me from work down to the police station. And then they took me across to the watch house and put me in a cell there. And it was busy. It was Friday night. And I remember saying to the guys there, like, if you'd let me out, I said, I was angry. And I was high as well. I wasn't clean on ice. Yeah, but I said, like, I've just got a job and I've been doing crime for 6 months. And if you let me out before 4 o'clock in the morning, I still have a job. And that's what I want to do. And they let me out at 5:30 with sort of a laugh and a kick on the arse. And I was furious, I was so angry. And I walked to my friend's house, I sculled a whole bottle of wine, broke into a car park and stole a suitcase, took that to my drug dealer's apartment, and 20 minutes later, 6 cops kicked in the door and arrested us all. And
how, though?
They'd followed me on I'd got a taxi, and then they found the taxi driver and
found out where they dropped you off.
Yeah, and then they looked on the cameras there to see what apartment, and they kicked in the door.
But like, why though? Like, you've been let out. It's not like you've
because I've stolen this.
Because
I stole something.
Yeah.
I've never sculled a whole bottle of wine in my life, and I sculled the whole bottle.
Sculled it.
It's hectic.
And done a shit job at stealing
shit earn. Yeah.
Shit earn.
Yeah, that's what it's called when you make money and you're a criminal. It's called an earn.
You learn something new every day. Right.
So
you got the wallet there, Connor? I'm not kidding.
So and then I was back in the watch house by 8:30, and I thought I was getting out. I was it's fine, and I didn't get out, and then the next day I didn't get out, and the next day I didn't get out, and then I had to go to court on the Monday, and I was like, I'm getting out now, so it's all right, and
they finally got you for something.
And it was, no, you're not getting out, and the next minute I was on a bus to bloody Arthur Gorrie Correctional Centre.
For how long?
I was there for 4 weeks almost. I would still be there if I hadn't have gotten bail to rehab, it's called. So, if you can get access to a good lawyer and know what you're doing, then you can get out, of jail it's called a change of circumstance, and it means you go into rehab or something's changed. So I got a good lawyer, and they were onto that straight away. And none of the other guys believed me. I was like, I'm getting out, I'm going to this rehab, and they're like, oh, fuck off, you can't do that. And it all happened. I got a bed in the rehab, and they let me out.
How long were you in rehab for?
For 1 month. Yeah. I'm actually kind of meant to still be in rehab at the moment.
Why the fuck are you here?
Because I got discharged from rehab, not for...
Did you want that? Were you asking for the discharge?
No, I wasn't. It was sort of a shock to me. I just cracked a joke in class, and the next minute they called me in the office and said, we're discharging you. And I was sort of like, what the fuck?
What was the joke?
Huh? Oh, the joke... They were talking about inappropriate touching, because there'd been new people and that was touching each other, and you're not meant to do that. Yeah. And everyone's going, oh, what does that mean? What does that mean? And I just said, don't arouse cunts, And everyone laughed. And
I suppose if you're all locked up and everyone's bloody
yeah, it's hard. Like I thought rehab would be easier than jail, but it was harder than jail. Yeah. I guess because you have a choice. And yeah, they discharged me.
Because of that joke?
Yeah, because of that, and because the week before I'd been aggressive. I tried to quit smoking, and I slammed a door, and I just wasn't feeling like, and they called me in the office and they said, we got to talk to you because you're not meeting your obligations. And I'd slammed the door because I'd been trying to talk to them about them not meeting their obligations. And then I was being told I wasn't meeting mine, and I just felt it was, I was being told to do all these things, which is understandable, but on the other hand, it also wasn't being met a lot, like there was classes that weren't on, and, we were just told to go and do our own thing, and then...
Do you think maybe you were just finding a reason, like at the end of the day, you're there, they could come back with the argument of, buddy...
Yeah,
you're here.
Of course.
You're in the real world. You're not in jail.
Of course.
If you don't have any class all day and you're locked up in a fucking room, it's still better than jail.
Yeah.
So
and that's what they should have said to me. I wish they had just been like, "You're a dickhead. You're wrong." But it was sort of like, "This is why." And we feel that this, and if someone's going to do that with me and I'm going to argue back, I don't like it. If I feel like I'm wrong. If I'm right,
But they would have felt probably, I guess to you, they would have come across very clinical and, maybe they didn't mean to be this way, but I would guess that when you're in a position like that, they're going to be very calm and that would fuck you off even more that they're not giving back that
especially
same...
Especially from jail, you do something in jail and it's like, fuck off, you idiot, go to your cell. Whereas here it's like that.
Okay, so you've got out of rehab. When was this again?
This was 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ almighty. So, okay, I guess, how long have you been clean for?
I was clean for 50 days.
You were clean?
I was
so
clean
when did you learn?
And I used last week, a week out of rehab. I used...
What did you use?
Ice.
Fuck.
Yeah. And that was hard,
Why? What was it like? What was it that made you go?
Well, I came out of there and I came back to the exact place where I was before, and I almost had a panic attack when I got there because it's just so familiar. And ice is like that, like if you're in a place or you're with people, you don't even have to say anything, and it's like this, telepathic thing where you both feel it and you're gonna go do it. And so for a week I didn't, and it was hard not to. But I found other things to do, and and then one day I just broke and I bloody ordered some drugs online, and then I used, and it was much harder now knowing all this stuff that I've learned, like before if I did use, it wasn't like, I didn't know that I didn't have to, or, I didn't know that I didn't have to, but I didn't know that the means to not, whereas now I do, and it was a lot harder after that, like, you know, to just come to terms with it, I guess.
So, again, I mean, it comes back to this environment thing. And it feels like everything that you've said, there's just nothing left. You're fucked. You're fucked.
Cheers.
But like I'm trying to think of like I don't fucking know anything. I have heard through I don't know if you've looked at Russell Brand much, but I mean he has a story that does sound quite similar. Like it was you've taken every single path that they say this is what you have to do, and it's not worked. It clearly doesn't work, and doesn't work for a lot of people. So, I mean, like there are places, I don't know about in Australia, but like I've heard that there's quite a good success rate in living in not just a rehab, but with other people that are like it's like with alcoholics and that it's a community based thing where everyone's accountable for one another, and it's not a hierarchy of doctors and that saying you can't do this, we're going to give you this, we're going to do that. It's keeping each other in line.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. I think that's the only way that it works, you know.
So, mate, what do you like? What are you going to do?
Rehab, still, you know.
But is that if that doesn't work? Is that you telling yourself that? Is that giving yourself a reason to try and feel like you're doing something? Because it obviously hasn't fucking worked. Jail hasn't worked. Overdosing hasn't worked.
I think jail did work. You know, I could have scored like this in jail, and I didn't. You know, like that was a huge wake up call for me. I remember when I first got into the watch house, I thought I shouldn't fucking be here.
Like, you only spent a few weeks there.
Yeah. No,
imagine spending 6 months there. You'd fucking get in it again.
Yeah, I know. Which is why I was so lucky, you know, that I got out to rehab.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, I was on the bus, you know, on the way out to jail with this guy. I had no idea who he was, and we started talking. And I told him, you know, a bit about what happened and stuff. And he said, you know, maybe jail's the best place for you. And I remember thinking, fucking, you know, it is, probably is. And it was, I think, you know, like I said that and people were like, you're crazy. But it was the best thing that's happened to me. It was fucked up and, you know, it really shouldn't have happened in the first place and all of this other bullshit. But I was on a, you know, bad road and I wasn't turning anywhere. If
you give yourself the only option that jail is the best place for you to sort this out, then you're putting in your head that
I'm not
you
saying
need.
it like that.
No, but like you're going to end up back there if that's where you're going. Well, maybe I'd be better off there. If that's lingering in your head.
I just mean it was like a huge kick in the ass. You know, it was like fuck, this shit's real and this shit can happen to me. And what the fuck, you know, have I been doing?
You know, like you really like if. I don't know. If one thing I could suggest, if you've got money to spend on ice and stuff like that, and you're spending considerable amount of money, like what's stopping you from buying a fucking plane ticket to fucking, I don't know, some random fucking Asian country and like...
Because I'll get on there.
Because you'll get on. So you'll get on anyway.
Like that's what I mean. It's not about... You know, lots of people, and it works sometimes, it's called, like, they call it geographicals in NA and AA, you know, and it's where you separate yourself, you know, and you geographically distance yourself from somewhere else. But it's not about, you know, the outside, you know, that is a big bearing on it, you know, that has a lot of influence on whether you do use or not, but you're never going to not use just from the outside. And that's what, you know, rehab taught me a lot. It's about the inside, you know. You have to be able to deal with yourself and deal with these, because you're always going to want to fucking use, you know. You're always going to want to get on now and then after doing it. But you need to be able to, you know, let that pass, let that feeling pass and know that it's not, you know, you need to, what do they call it? Use your bloody being mind, not your doing mind. So, yeah. You know, I'm not gonna. I don't think I'll go back to that. I don't say I won't because I've said that before, and it hasn't worked. But that's not something I want in my life, and it never was. But now I see that I can do it, you know, and I do have this chance to not do it, and really change. And that's what I plan to do, really. Like,
it's just frustrating in my own head, and why I was getting a bit frustrated is it's not your fault. It's just like what the fuck do you do? What the fuck
It's
do you
hard,
do?
you
And
know.
I didn't realize that you were still basically, you know, you're in it. You're still in it, and you're going to be in it for ages. But you are still in it. Maybe not as bad as you were before, but you know, this is really up to you where you go from here. And you know, you're your own fucking god. There's no other external fucking thing that influences anything in your life but your decision to pick up that pipe and give it another fucking crack. So, you know, I don't even know what to say. I wish the best for you. I'm optimistic about it because, you know, again, you know, you've got so many devils on your shoulder now that it would be extremely easy for you to fall into that trap of what the fuck's the point of living if I can't get rid of this. But I guess it's an eye opener for a lot of people. Like I said at the very start of the episode, it's very easy for me as a comedian to make jokes of junkies, and just for anyone in general to go, you know, call someone an ice addict or whatever, and not go any further than that. It's a very two-dimensional issue. Whereas really, you know, you're a normal bloke. You've done normal things in your life. You want the best for yourself, and you know, for some odd fucking reason, you fell down this horrible trap that is one of those things where I hate to say it, but like the only thing you can do is get as far as you can out of the hole as possible. I hope that you reach the light one day, but even when you feel like you reach the light, that's what they say, once an addict, always an addict. And you know, you just need to stay and work every day to get to that, closer to that light, because the further you fall away, the more you're fucked. I don't know if those analogies made any sense at all.
No, it's very good. Yeah.
But I think people might take a lot from this episode, and
I hope so. Yeah.
Thanks for coming in and sharing that story, because you know it's going out to a lot of people, and it's going to be available for anyone to see whenever. And it's an incredible story. So I don't know. I wish you all the best. And you know, what's next? What's fueling you now?
Staying clean. You know, it's hard to not get ahead of yourself. You know, because I always want to do something. I always want to, you know, further my life or get better at this. But it's just being able to not do that and stop and just work on every day not using, you know, like it's just that for now.
Day by day.
Day by day, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, Sam, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it, mate. You stay safe, and we'll talk to you,
Thank you.
soon. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.